To the Point with Michael Williams.
Good morning. I hope you had a great 4th of July and are having a great holiday weekend. I'm joined by our longtime News Channel 5 political analyst, Brian Crowley. Thanks, Brian, for coming in. Rumor had it that you were an ink-stained scribe back in the revolutionary times.
Exactly.
You've been covering politics a long time, my friend. Talk post-debate.
Well, it was a nightmare for Joe Biden. I know he's trying to recover from it, but I frankly don't think there is any recovery from what happened. I think people are going to be focused on every sound he makes, and the slightest little hesitation or movement problem is going to, that's what everybody's going to focus on. And looking at it from the standpoint of Florida Democrats, it's not good news for Florida Democrats.
Talk about that more.
Well, I think that, and we don't know how this is going to shake out yet, but, you know, the Florida Democrats are struggling. They're trying to rebuild the party from the ground up. Part of that requires, come November, a strong Democratic national ticket.
Big coattails that you hope for.
Makes voters enthusiastic, and they want to go to the polls and they want to work hard. And unless the national ticket gets its act together very quickly, that's going to be a huge problem. And frankly, I think Joe Biden staying on the ballot is not good for the Florida Democrats.
You say you don't think he can recover. Extend that logic. If you don't think he can recover, for viewers watching, does that mean it's automatically that Democrats have no hope in November, that it's Donald Trump's election for a second term? Is that what you mean? Is that what you see?
Well, you know, it's hard to predict, but I would say, you know, that from the day of the debate moving forward, they did very little to try to recover. The ABC interview they had certainly had an impact, but you know, people are going to tend to focus on his movements. You know, whenever you watch him getting on and off a plane or walking,
or every verbal misstep.
Every verbal misstep. It's just you can't erase what people saw, and with all the coverage and everything about it, I think most people believe that he's having cognitive issues. The degree of it, we don't entirely know. And I think it's going to be hard to erase that. And then it raises the question, if he's having even fairly mild cognitive issues now, and I'm not a doctor, I'm using the if, it raises the question, what will happen over the next 4 years? Because if, in fact, he has an issue, people tend to get progressively worse as they get older. So people wonder, he'd be 86 by the time he was in his fourth year.
Finished with a second term, were he to win?
You know, so and even people who really love Joe Biden are concerned.
Brian, you and I, of course, sat and viewed the debate, had post-debate analysis that night. Your phone was blowing up, and I've read a lot of coverage that suggests a lot of Democrats are saying across the country, wait a minute, to his core group of supporters and the aides around him. You had to know that these are ongoing issues. We deserve to know about it, to perhaps at least have the chance to make another choice before we got to this point. And some are now arguing they still want that choice. You've covered national and state and local politics for a long, long time. You said to me a few weeks ago, there's always something in a campaign that's unexpected. We were talking more national, international affairs. Now it's a matter of age. Break that down for us. What are you hearing? We're in uncharted territory again.
Yeah, you know, one of the interesting things that's happened, and we've talked about it off air a little bit, is that, you know, Trump and his many, many lies that he told during the debate and his own content and everything, and even his missteps in speaking from time to time are largely being ignored. And, you know, the Trump campaign overall has wisely kind of just left it alone. They're not really saying a lot because they know that Joe Biden's doing more damage to himself.
Why being ignored? Because Trump critics and Biden supporters say that's unfair, that you're all in on criticizing the president, including some of the most liberal bastions in the country, like the New York Times, but that the former president's getting a pass.
Well, look, nobody can argue that the former president hasn't been heavily criticized by the media constantly. You know, everybody knows he just recently had 34 convictions
in the New York hush money
hush money trial. everybody knows Donald Trump and what he is, and you either accept it or you reject it. The Biden folks seem to have done a fairly good job of dismissing the cognitive issues, and then the debate blew it up, and it's not going away.
To be continued, we want to turn to some other news that I want your analysis on, Brian. The U.S. Supreme Court ruling, of course, that says presidents have immunity for official acts, though not for unofficial ones. It's a ruling Donald Trump and his supporters say is vindication, as opponents say it does not absolve him of January 6th or other allegations he faces. Scripps News legal affairs correspondent Ava Joy Burnett with more.
In this highly anticipated Supreme Court decision, Chief Justice John Roberts writing for the majority saying all presidents have immunity for official acts. Justice Sonia Sotomayor dissenting saying in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. On the final day of the Supreme Court's term, the justice is finding that U.S. presidents enjoy absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for conduct within their official duties, but that a president could face prosecution for unofficial acts. Chief Justice John Roberts writing, the president is not above the law, but Congress may not criminalize the president's conduct in carrying out the responsibilities of the executive branch under the Constitution. The Chief Justice went on to say, the president therefore may not be prosecuted for exercising his core constitutional powers. In a scathing dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor warning, the court effectively creates a law-free zone around the president, upsetting the status quo that has existed since the founding. Former President Donald Trump, who faces 4 federal criminal charges after the January 6th insurrection, argued he should not face charges because he has presidential immunity. The 6-3 ruling sends the case back to the trial court, where Judge Tanya Chutkan will determine what's an official act versus an unofficial act. Former President Donald Trump and Truth Social touting the decision as a big win. The White House saying in a statement, quote, as President Biden has said, nobody is above the law. That is a core American principle in how our system of justice works. Ava Joy Burnett, Scripps News, Washington.
Brian, you said to me before we went to air, if you were trying to write a script about what's going on in this campaign with criminal trials that the former president faces, he's saying he has total vindication. Legal scholars are saying, for instance, the Fort Pierce classified documents case would not fall under this immunity ruling. It was for acts or alleged acts after he left the presidency. A hush money case may not fall under that. It's a state case. January 6th, we'll see. You take that, you think the age issue here, you're great at putting a bow on all this, but you're going to need a mighty big bow.
Well, it's going to be interesting when historians look back on this time.
But the immunity ruling itself, thoughts?
I think the immunity ruling is going to depend a lot on who the future presidents are. You know, we elect people in theory anyway who are going to uphold the law, you know, who are going to try to do what's right for the country. And if those are the kind of people that we're selecting, then, you know, the immunity ruling may not have as big an impact. If we select people to go to the White House who see the immunity as something that empowers them, that allows them to do whatever they want to do, that would be more of a threat. But I would also add, in some fairness, that, you know, presidents have long exercised extreme power that brought into question whether or not they had the legal right to do that. People argue over whether or not a president could send troops to war. Iraq, Afghanistan come to mind, without permission from Congress.
And there have been plenty of debates about the War Powers Act because of that.
And, you know, people might feel like there should have been greater prosecutions of Bill Clinton with Monica Lewinsky. And I think we need to remind people that you know, there were impeachment efforts at Trump, and one of the things that the court noted was that presidents face impeachment. So that if they think that there's some violation of law, that they believe that the Congress is the one that that takes action under the Constitution. I think it's too soon to know whether or not the immunity exemption, which is concerning, will be abused or more refined as the years go by.
Brian, we'll have much more from you as we focus a bit more on some of the big hot button issues going on in Florida this year. We'll come back with you after the break. The heat of summer upon us and the heat turning up on Florida amendment questions. More from our Sunday Roundtable next.